don't know.
I
But
got,
anyway.
I got 3 minutes. I won't yell at him yet.
Okay, yeah, because I was preparing last week, I think, but I think you didn't.
Well, if you came last week, you'd been the only one.
Well, the week before. Listen.
That was probably the best lesson you've had in a while.
It was really good.
The teacher was great.
Oh, just sit at the
Chris, I was
table.
here talking to myself.
Could you sit at the table so if you have any important questions, I want to be able to hear.
You want me? You
If
want
you're
me?
behind me, I can't.
Well, you're
I
not
wanna
supposed
be
to be
able to
paying
hear what
attention
you
to me.
Hi, stranger.
Hey, I was busy.
Oh, she is here.
Yeah, Kelly's here. I was following tape.
Okay, is it too hot now?
No, a little bit stuffy. Yeah, stuffy.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello. We just seen
Did
each
he
other.
run this
You know, we
by
had
you
three
home?
visiting
So you
couples
know what
visiting
So
this
everybody's
morning.
here, right? Except for Richard.
Good.
Oh, wait,
One of them
Richard said he wasn't
I know
going to
one
be here.
Oh, he's at the Kairos prison.
Yes.
He's coming back, going back.
Yeah, he's driving back.
Oh, no, that's why. Anyway, once in there, I wanted to learn. So Helen said, because she was running auditorium.
All right. You guys ready?
We are.
Good. Couple of housekeeping.
Housekeeping.
Thank you very much. Housekeeping. Next week, we will be on, what chapter is it? 16. So we will go to God's Providence next week. I think it's going to take 2
It's the
weeks.
15th next Sunday.
Go slow, cause I won't be
We
back until
finished
after the
this
first of the
chapter?
year.
Well, he's, yeah.
Did you hear what I said?
Go slow.
Go
Go
slow.
slow, because I won't be back until after the first of
Of
the
the
year.
year.
Have you ever known us to go fast?
That's what
Do you have the outlines for?
Okay, I almost finished the outlines for chapter 16, but, you know, it's sort of like almost getting pregnant, you know.
Almost.
No, I don't have the outlines, is what I'm saying.
I'm all sort of pregnant.
It just sometimes feels that way. So we will go on to God's Providence next week. Probably 2 weeks, maybe not. We'll figure it out. So the second thing is I didn't. The church office did order the books for Pilgrim's Progress. So we still have we still have 5 chapters left to finish. So maybe by Easter we'll start Pilgrim's Progress. But I did get them to order the books so that we're all off of the same book.
Okay.
All right. So as soon as those get here, I'll give them to you. I don't know how much they cost, and honestly, I don't really care. If you want to give money for them, then put it in the stupid offering plate. No
Wait,
bother giving it to
What
me.
is it?
Pilgrim's Progress.
I know.
What does it cost? I have no idea.
No,
Okay.
I've already got Pilgrim's Progress. I just wondered what edition it was.
You're going to ask me
Doesn't
something
matter.
like that.
Doesn't matter.
Oh.
The English one.
It won't matter. It won't be that different.
We're going to the Swiss one. All right. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Ed. You all know Ed.
We know Ed and
I'm
love
going to
him.
let him give you his own background, and this should be fun. As always, interrupt at any time.
Okay.
With that, hey, have fun.
See you later.
Yes.
You want him to feel welcome.
Yes.
As a former professor, that's not the house rule. No,
We have different house rules.
you're in my house, that's right. In the spirit of full disclosure, you know that I am Catholic.
Yeah.
And I only am allowed in here periodically as an associate.
That's not true. You're allowed all the time.
But I am a product
you were
of
Catholic.
parochial school. I have had all 8 years of elementary school. That's what we called it when I was growing up. 4 years of high school, 2 years of Catholic university as well. So I am not born again. I was born Catholic.
Yeah.
I really was looking forward to this presentation from the standpoint that, first of all, let me tell you, you've got a great instructor here. I really respect this man.
I know, I agree.
Oh, wrong guy, excuse me.
That was wrong class.
It's mutual. It's mutual.
This guy really is tremendous. I really respect the way he prepares his lessons, and it's always instructive. I had a couple of courses with him Last year we did Jesus and the Gospels and such.
Oh, yeah.
Outstanding, man. I really learned a lot from him. So I'm glad to be able to jump in and help him in this regard. So this is some of my favorite areas. And I also gave this talk a couple years ago at my fellow Catholic across the street in St. Mary's. So this is definitely something that it's been controversial. You know it is. Anytime you talk about Genesis, you're going to have two sides of the aisle immediately, taking it literally or figuratively. So I want to be able to at least touch on the fact that what is the parallel between Genesis and some of the scientific theories about how the world came to be, and more specifically how Earth was formed. And of course, if you start talking about Earth, you're going to talk about all the things that are on Earth, like man. Where's he coming from? What bus did he come in on? So let me start this out to give you an idea of what we're looking for. So one of the big, obviously, discussion points is man really a stepping stone in the process of evolution? What's going to come after man, perhaps? And he is obviously part of the overall evolutionary process if you go to that part of thinking. And the other piece is, what does it look like if you look at evolution compared to creationism? Really, there's only two different flavors there you can look at. Everything was created in one moment of time, and what you see now is pretty much the way it was back then. Or what you see now is a follow-on or another version of what was created at the very beginning. By the way, just give you a little brief background. What do you think, from a Protestant perspective, what do you think the Catholic Church says about evolution versus creationism?
I hope they say it's creation.
Creation?
That's what I thought.
No.
No, they don't.
Actually, the Catholic Church allows you to go with any of those two interpretations you like. The only thing they require of you, from a faith perspective, is to say God, or acknowledge God is at the beginning of whatever it is you're going to go with. God is at the first point. So he was responsible, if you will, for whatever happened. Be it started at one moment in time or it unfolded over time. And the church is, quite frankly, very, very liberal in that regard.
Can I ask a question?
No. You remember? Yes.
Would you rather me not ask?
No, I would. Thank you.
Well, because what you're telling me, it seems that at the latter part of last century, it hasn't been all that long that Catholics were allowed to have a Bible that their own Bible instead of, because don't you have to go to a mediator? You can't just,
To obtain a Bible? Or to acquire a Bible? Is that what you're asking?
no, but my understanding was the Catholics were not allowed to have their own Bible. They had to go ask any questions.
Oh, no. On the contrary, no, that's not the case at all.
Okay.
I mean, quite frankly, almost any Catholic family will have a family Bible that's been handed down from grandma to grandma, so,
Okay.
yeah, that's definitely,
And someone like me.
hopefully wasn't a Catholic.
They were Catholic.
We probably have about 8 published Bibles in our house right now.
Okay. Well, that's for me, that's kind of important to know if
Yeah.
that was true.
Now, obviously, quote, our Bible is sometimes different than the other Bibles running around. And I can't even articulate the differences between, let's say,
You
our.
know, there are different books out there.
Sure, yeah,
And
and you're right, each religion, quite frankly, has embraced different books. So the number of books in our Bible is different than a
It's
lot of the
different
other.
from the number. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Lots of discussion
I'll
about
be
what's
quiet
in and
for a
what's
while.
not. The idea behind, of course, is all we're talking about, beginning of the universe. When did that actually happen? And you've all heard of and probably seen the show Big Bang Theory.
We love it.
And from a scientific standpoint, that's not a theory. That's really the way scientists believe. That, again, that's based on a lot of mathematical models and predictions about what happened. But the model has been working perfectly well. We go back and look at the observable data we have now in the universe. It fits. So from a scientific point of view, that's the way it works. But one of the interesting things I think it comes up here, are we unique in the world? is this the only so-called civilized organism that we have in the entire
There
universe?
could be somebody else. We don't know. Yeah.
That's right, we don't.
No, how do we know?
If I go through, quite frankly, real quick, Reader's Digest version of Genesis, God created heavens and earth, and on day one, the earth was dark, covered with clouds. Interesting, this does follow, quite frankly, very well with Big Bang Theory. And I'll show you. What you probably don't really appreciate, the fact that the universe was formed in less than 300,000 years. But the first moments of time, how much do you remember about math? In the first, let me give you a fraction. 1/10 to the 43rd power. That's 1/10 with 43 zeros behind it. That is the first instant where many of the elements in the universe were formed. It happened, quite frankly. And the other thing, it's not an explosion, it's really an expansion. So it's like a balloon that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And the aspect behind this is that in the early time frame, we had some elements which later became actually atoms. They were the building blocks for atoms. And the universe was so, quite frankly, soupy, if I'll call it that, with these elements that you could not pass light through. It was like looking through a fog. And so in reality, it was really dark, covered with clouds. So that fits, if you will, what Genesis is saying about how the universe was formed. And now this is a little bit out of sequence in terms of how the theory goes, but again, second day, waters form, dry land appears after that on the third day. And I know you recognize the fact that the periods mentioned in the Bible as days are not necessarily 24-hour days. They're, I think we'll just call them periods, that's really what they are. And as it turns out, I talked about these building blocks. Actually, they started to form atoms, and clouds vaporized, if you will, or were removed, and light was actually starting to shine through the universe. And the light was actually coming from cosmic radiation from when the initial expansion began. So this fits, again, can't really see. No cats in the room, okay. Light actually was starting to shine through the universe, and the light was coming from some of the initial radiation that began with the, with the initial expansion. Day 5, we had started to have creatures being formed, and it's true, we had a lot of very primitive creatures formed before man actually showed up. Man shows up quite late in the overall process. And we have, of course, man actually is formed after a lot of the other, what I call less intelligent animals were formed. And on the seventh day, God rested. And there's a lot of other pieces, of course, that are mentioned in the Bible under Genesis. But the interesting that God made this notion about man should not be alone. He recognizes that he is a single being, and in this point, woman is created to be a helpmate, so to speak, with Adam. And you're certainly familiar with that.
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
From a scientific standpoint, because I mean, here's the old grenade. Out of nothing.
Yes. Now that's really interesting. The universe was formed, physicists will tell you, from what is called a singular point. A singular point is defined as an element that is infinitesimally small, infinitely dense, and obviously it just created energy. Now, science will say that's the way the universe started. What happened just prior to that beats a tar out of me. We have no answer. They have no answer. And we can't say, well, there was space. Space is something, we don't know what it was just behind the mirror. So,
It's just God.
Well, and that's really, so you have to bring up the question, okay, who put that infinitesimal point there
To begin with.
that's infinitely heavy, dense? And from that point, the entire universe was formed. So that point became an expanding balloon, and it's still expanding.
I like you using expansion and not explosion.
Yeah, it really, yeah, I mean, the
I
Big
mean,
Bang
makes
makes it sound like an
Yeah,
explosion,
like
but it really is
explosion,
it
but-
really is an
I like
expansion.
that term.
There are some superficial inconsistencies between Genesis 1 and 2, but again, it's not worthwhile rushing through that. Certainly, we understand this notion about a day. Those are not equal periods of time, at least not as far as science is concerned. But it does bring up the fact that, okay, how old is the universe? And when did life really begin? When did man show up? This is the thing I really like. The fist fight between Darwin and Jesus. Yeah, this would be, if you want to call it, an argument between creationism versus evolution. And really, from a science point of view, there is a significant distinction, because creationism indicates that pretty much the species you see now is what actually began on a given point in time. And of course, the church would say, well, that was created by God, as opposed to what you see now really is a distant cousin, if you will,
Yeah.
of what was first created. So there's been a lot of ways, if you want to look at the acceptance of creationism. Where does humanity play in there? How do you account for all these biological diversity? And again, what is the age of the universe? There is, I guess, probably 4 different classes, if you will, or maybe even 5 different views of what is called the age of the Earth. Interesting here, the young Earth indicate that the Earth is about 10,000 years old. And apparently, if you did a national poll, this is not too old, 40% of the people believe that Earth is relatively young, and they still believe, if you want to call it that, was created by God, but nonetheless, there's a large majority of people who believe that the Earth is relatively young, and as far as that goes, the universe is not that far older, much older than the Earth is. You go over to the other, I guess what I'll call it extreme, is theistic evolution, which is God is at the front of that. Everything you see now came from evolution, and more specifically, almost everyone other categories believe the Earth is much, much older than 10,000 years, what they call a scientifically approved number. By the way, do you know, pop quiz, have you heard what the so-called birthday of the universe is? How old is the universe? I'm going to give it to you later, but just curious as to what the so-called popular opinion might be.
Well, it's on
Can't
your
we
it's
bigger?
on your outline on page 14. but-
I'm on 14. I'm on 14
It's,
right now. Yeah, old Earth.
Oh, wow.
Older.
13 3/4 billion years old.
1,
Yeah,
2, 3, 4, 4.
Yeah, I can't say that, but it's 4 5 0 0 0 0 0
It's
0
billion.
0 0 0 0.
It's 4 billion 500.
13 3/4 billion years old, plus or minus 350 million years.
Okay.
That's the uncertainty.
Are you sure?
Well, it's really interesting. The number keeps getting revised almost annually.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah, and it's
Because of
getting
why?
tighter and tighter. Because the uncertainty is being removed, we're getting more and more data that tightens the number.
This is interesting in what he's saying, because I just Googled it. But this is from NASA's Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe,
Right.
WMAP. Whoa, whatever that means. The European Space Agency's Planck spacecraft. That's exactly what it says, 13.772.
Yeah. The last number I heard was 778, but it's getting good.
Well, one of the, so one of
But
the, oh,
in determining that, I don't know how to even ask my question.
How do you know that?
Who's determined, someone just recently has made that determination, but it's still, what am I? I'll wait till let me put
Well,
that
is
on
she
hold
asking,
so I
like,
can
how
follow
much,
up with her.
how do you determine?
well,
it?
hold on a second, let me throw out another one of these.
Okay.
Explain time in 40 minutes or less. I mean, because time,
Time is a fabrication of man.
well,
It
it's
is.
It's a
relative.
measure of change.
Yeah, because,
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the way I've always looked at it is time is relative to where you are.
Yes.
Because we judge time by the rotation of the earth and
Correct.
the rotation of the earth around the sun.
Right.
Well, that's our time.
Yeah, right. It's very subjective.
It's
is
where you're at.
It's personal.
Yeah. So to say, that the universe is, billions of years old, okay, by what
Oh, yeah.
by
I see,
what
yeah.
by what standard? By our standard, okay.
Yeah.
But
Right.
how did they find that out?
Yeah, exactly.
When,
Who's
when
making that
this expansion
determination?
began, it emitted significant amounts of radiation, and also space dust came about. We can measure that radiation, and according to math models, know when it started. So the amount of radiation is directly proportional to our measure of time.
Now the one we showed this because you're looking definitely at the space part of it.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that we watched 2 weeks ago was sort of the geology of it.
Of it, yeah.
And it was quite interesting on the geology of it, where they talked about these paradigm shifts, that happen. And if you look at the paradigm shifts, what the scientists that we were listening to talked about was to look backwards from your current paradigm to another paradigm. You're gonna start getting messed up because of the radical change. But that's definitely looking at it from a geology standpoint. And the point that they used was Mount St. Helens, where they looked at the age of the rocks from Mount St. Helen, knowing when they were created.
Yeah.
and
1980, right?
yeah, and they blind tested it to the carbon dating, and they're sitting there going, well, it's 3.2 billion years or whatever years old. It's like, well, not. 1980.
Yeah, it's 1980 when it
Yeah.
erupted.
So I mean,
Exactly.
it's interesting to get it from the space radiation standpoint
Yes.
versus the geology standpoint, because they are vastly. I'm saying this hoping for confirmation that I'm saying the right thing. That the geology could be vastly different from an aging standpoint in how we determine that, versus how you as a scientist is looking at the space part of it. Is that
As it turns out, they're very well correlated.
okay?
Well,
They're
they
not.
should
They're
be
not really
correlated,
that much
yeah.
different. Because we're finding fossils that are as old as the Earth is, because they were being formed at the same time. So from that perspective, geology bears out at least the age of the Earth. It doesn't speak to, of course, the age of the universe.
Right.
That's your difference. Oh, wait a minute.
Let's see. Of course, every time you talk about evolution or the creation, you got to talk about organisms obviously change over time, and that's going to be a significant difference. And this notion of a common descent. Start talking about a common descent, you're going, okay, we're talking about Adam and Eve here, right? Everything started from a common ancestor. Evolution believes that. That's a fundamental structure of evolution. It deals with geological issue of the Earth, and it's in solar system being formed. Solar system is much younger than the universe.
How could that be?
Universe was a bunch of soupy
Soupy like
building
you said.
blocks for a long time.
You're thinking of
Area,
Earth, yeah.
Yes.
and
And remember, this balloon, if you want to call it, is expanding, but it's just nothing more than really fundamental building blocks. Earth comes along much later in time frame. The Earth, if I remember correctly, is about, which gets into the solar system, is about 4.8 billion years old. Much younger, if you will, than the universe. Universe, remember, is 13 bill. Earth is only 4.5.
Yeah, that's what our outline
That all
says.
just blows my mind.
But this is 10,000 to 20,000 years, it's so confusing.
Well, that's the young Earth theory. So the young
Yeah.
Earth theory is going to say that. The old Earth theory
It's wrong.
No. So, again, remember where we're coming from. We're coming from a theology standpoint
Right.
of the Bible. And age, the age of the earth, the age of the universe is not something that the Bible says dogmatically. It just doesn't.
Right.
That doesn't change the fact that God created it.
Yeah.
So, this is one of those
Could
ones
have been
where
billions of years ahead.
Christians can sit there and arm wrestle over the age of the earth. Go for it. Because it's not something that God dogmatically said one way or another, Sorry.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, because it gets confusing.
Okay.
So, this is certainly a good segue to when the universe was created, Big Bang Theory. Here's that age universe, 13.798 billion years plus or minus 350 million years. And again, Judy, you brought up one of the spacecraft that was been measuring radiation. This is some of the other, also, this is the one, in fact, you just mentioned. Spacecraft measuring radiation. That's how we come up with these numbers.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
WMN.
And this cosmic background radiation, that's been reaching us, if you will, since the beginning of the universe. And that's being measured, continually being measured. And it's also used to measure the expansion of the universe. Remember I said the Big Bang is really just an expansion? Interesting note here, it's still expanding day. In fact, we now understand the universe is expanding at an accelerating rate. The balloon is getting bigger and bigger, faster and faster. And it's interesting that, not going to be in our lifetime, and this is not going to happen by Tuesday, but the universe is expanding at such a rate that it will exceed the speed of light. Now you go, wait a minute, didn't Einstein say something about nothing can go faster than the speed of light? That's true, objects cannot, but the universe can expand faster than the speed of light, which means things that we see now in distant space will disappear. Because the light will never reach us. It'll be going away faster than the light can get to us.
Yeah.
But you said we won't be here around. You said.
No, this is not
Not
gonna
gonna worry
happen.
about it.
This is not gonna happen soon.
Good.
Oh, you had me sweating.
On your way to rid us.
Yeah, if you navigate by stars, you're screwed.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and just to sort of highlight a couple of points in Revelation.
I was just gonna say, this sounds like Revelations.
So in Revelation, first of all, it can happen whenever God wants it to happen. But it gives this word, and this is in chapter 6. The sky was split apart like a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and every island were moved out of their place. This idea of a scroll, and there's many illustrations of this in the Bible where God stretched out the universe. I mean, so one of the big things as we talk about this is today everybody has to be against somebody else from a standpoint of I believe this, well I believe this. Well, it's like, well, wait a second. Don't they all sort of match if you take a little common sense to it? Science and religion are not at odds with each other.
Right.
I agree.
And in fact, if you look
They
at
support.
the beginning, I'm going to say the beginning of science when you get Isaac Newton, when you got they were Christians. The Big Bang Theory was developed by who? A Catholic monk, a Catholic priest,
I'm trying to think of his name.
Yeah.
This idea of,
We're cold
if,
in here now.
if you believe the balloon thing of it expanding, still you can as Chris just said, creationism, I believe that, this is just my own belief, that the farther and farther we get along as far with technology, the more and more he's kind of allowing us to see. I mean, we've had things going out to send home pictures.
Yes, right.
And that would never have been possible last century.
Oh, you
early.
bet, you're right.
And so, it looks like, I mean, if we continue to see more and more, which we're never gonna come face to face with, it still sort of goes along with that same thing, but I believe that it's still part of creationism, and he's allowing us to see this. And let's face it, he's coming back one day pretty soon, and yeah, that'll be the end of all of that, you know, there won't be any more question, but,
It'll be a paradigm shift.
Big time.
The reason he's doing
Well-
this is to make the new heaven and the new earth.
Exactly.
Welcome to our class.
Yeah. Along with that, you know, there are three different theories about expansion. One of which is the expansion is going to go on forever. Okay? So this blue is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger forever. Another one is that it will stabilize at some so-called fixed size. Of course, you go, what is that size? Well, it's infinite. Okay. So when it expands forever, it's going to be more infinite, and then when it just stabilizes, it's going to be infinite. And the other one is that it's going to collapse on itself. At some point in time,
that's interesting.
this acceleration is going to slow down, and it's going to start coming back,
Come in.
and actually coming back to a singular point. So it's going to be the anti-Big Bang Theory, which means
Will
this
it
thing will
destroy
go through a
everything?
cycle.
It will destroy everything that it does.
Well,
Does it?
again, one of the concepts is that it doesn't destroy. Yes, I guess in that sense, it goes back to what I'll call all the primitive matter. All the energy will be condensed into a
Exactly.
point,
Look at everything.
which will be infinitely small and infinitely dense. And then we start the whole process again.
Well,
So it's an elastic loop.
tell me from a scientific standpoint. This is from 2 Peter. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, in which the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the elements will be destroyed with intense heat, and the earth and its work will be burned up.
There
That's
it
that's
is.
the elastic theory.
I'll be.
that's the what?
The elastic, because you're expanding now, we're going to
And go back.
theoretically go back to a point. So it's just a big rubber band, if you will. And we'll repeat the cycle forever. That's a theory. Again, we're not going to worry about that.
We won't be here. Or not here. My word.
This is a entire profile of how the universe was formed. This is just a period of time. I don't know if you can't read it. That's
No.
10 to the minus 43rd power.
Oh,
That's
what
1
yours
over
is.
10 with 43 zeros behind it. In that short period of time, the universe started from a infinitesimal point, quite frankly non-existent, to the size of a grapefruit in that period of time.
Good.
Now you go, okay, who's around measuring that stuff?
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, okay? It's all based on mathematical models. But I want to really emphasize every data point that we've taken by science since this was formulated fits. So until we find something, go, hey, this doesn't fit, what are we going to do about it? We've got to come up with a better fucking model.
Yeah.
So far, it's working perfectly. So all I can say is the model predicts that this is what happened, and this is the situation we see here. Interesting, just broad brush, 7 periods of time.
Oh, good.
Oh, perfect, the complete.
Yeah. Now, we had to fudge a little bit to make it fit Genesis, but, but the magic number is 7, okay?
I love it. My word.
In this second period, we're starting to form these building blocks that will become ultimately atoms. There are neutrons, protons, and electrons, but they're all free elements. They're not combining yet. But there's this soup that I talked about before. We can't get any light through it because it really is like a fog. That's the universe.
just one big fog. Now, in this third period, these are starting to form actually molecules. We're not to any objects yet, we just got the building blocks, we're just establishing that. And again, this is 1 second. In 1 second, all that stuff is happening.
Talking about amazing God.
Yeah. And again, still, there's a lot of heat. I think I've seen the number, it's 10 to the 57th power degrees Fahrenheit. You can't even imagine what that is, you know. Super hot.
My hair's frizz.
Again,
Yes, your hair would frizz.
now,
Not all that
this
was
is
good.
a 3-minute period. Now, the next period of time, we're starting to form basic molecules of hydrogen and helium, and the light is starting to shine through there. This is a period of 300,000 years, just here. We're starting to form elements that we can actually build things with. And in this case here, we're starting to form the first stars in 1 billion years. We're starting to form stars because they're made up of the lighter elements, helium and hydrogen. And we have stuff there. And I should say, that's another way we can measure the age of the universe. We know, for example, the sun is a star. We know the heavier stars, greater mass, they burn out quicker. The lighter stars burn for a long time. Our sun is a much lighter, in a class of stars, is a much lighter star than all the others out there. So we know how long, in fact, we can actually see some of the dead stars out there now, and we know the fact that how long they've been dead and what their mass would have been at the time, and we can go back in time to figure out when were these stars created, and therefore get another hack on how old is the universe.
Now, wait a minute. Explain a dead star. It's dead, it doesn't have any light, right?
Well, because it's just dead matter.
Just a
It
mass.
doesn't
Yeah,
shine
just a mass.
anymore.
Doesn't shine,
Burned
but it's
out,
still
right?
there.
It's burned out.
Burned out.
Yeah,
It's still
and most
there.
times these will be picking up by other stars and then form new stars.
Oh.
So do you
Are they
know
made?
Huh?
how many more years
they made?
the sun
I
has?
bet
Get
you stars
rid of
were
it.
Yeah, the sun, right now, they estimate the sun is good for another 30 billion years.
What was your question?
Oh, good.
How long
sure
does
hope the
sun
Lord
last?
comes back before 30 billion years.
30 billion years.
Before it goes
Yeah.
away and
Yeah,
dies.
the sun is one of the
It would be
lighter
before the
stars,
sun
one of the less
burns out,
massive
and he
stars.
said 30
And
billion
so it's got a longer life. And we also predict, if you will, it will not go out in a supernova. It's just gonna burn out of fuel
Oh.
and go dark.
Okay.
We won't be here.
No, I don't think so.
And you got to remember, you hear the massive number, the massive number of time, and I still go back to time is relative. And when God sits there and says 1,000 years is like a day, and a day is like 1,000 years, we're on this little ball.
We don't know.
You know?
We don't, yeah.
For those of us that are hoping that the Lord will come back next year, that's just too far to think about waiting.
Yeah, on God's
No,
time,
no,
you know,
no.
on God's time, this could be like, well, it's 15 minutes.
Blinking
On
an eye.
God's time,
Yeah.
whatever God's time
Yeah.
is.
And I should say, of course, the end of this so-called 7th period, this is where we are now. Stars are born, burn out, new elements are created, new planets are being formed. And obviously, much of what we know is only in our own backyard, our own galaxy,
Yeah.
the Milky Way. Milky Way is tremendously big. We're actually on one of the western wings of the Milky Way. So we're not in the
Who- you mean
prime time
Earth?
neighborhood. What?
Earth
Our
is
solar-
ours.
Our solar system.
Our solar system is.
Yes,
you mean,
yeah.
okay.
Is one system in the Milky Way.
So, that
Because
being
we
the
can
case,
see the Milky
wouldn't
Way.
that kind of rule out these people that believe that we're gonna eventually find people living out there somewhere?
No.
Because we're never
Well,
gonna get that far out.
That's the part that you're right. It could be an obstacle because, first of all, you said if there's anybody that's civilized out there now,
we should have been explored and colonized, because that's a typical nature of any
But we haven't
civilization.
found anything.
We haven't found anything, and I'm not sure if anybody has found us or even cared to.
No,
They probably
but
would
we
not
haven't
wanna
found
find out.
anybody.
No, we haven't found anybody. So in spite of what you heard about
What'd you
Area
say?
51 in New Mexico,
Oh, yeah, that's right, New Mexico.
Are we talking Roswell or?
yes, we are.
I'm from that area.
Oh.
I have not seen any green people.
Yeah.
There are the lights at Marfa, Texas, that are
There are
interesting.
those
yeah.
lights. They sing them at Marfa.
Okay, this is just again another representation of how the pieces come together.
Oh, my word.
In this particular case, I think there's more than 7 periods, if you will. It's how you slice it. And so again, I admit we kind of fudged a little bit when we said, oh, there's 7 slices here.
Well, okay, this is from all the research that's out there, where's the center of the universe?
Don't know.
Nobody knows.
We don't know.
Where did that singularity?
That would be fun to maybe map out.
Yeah.
Because you could say, well, all the radiation seems to be coming from this point, right? Where's it all coming from? Well, it all seems to be coming from west to east. So maybe it's over there.
So that's one thing, they don't
That's a
know.
really
They don't
interesting
know.
question,
Yeah.
because theoretically,
There
it should all emanate outward from some central
They
point.
should, shouldn't they?
Yeah, it should. But we can't figure out how to determine that point, because we can't get enough compass readings, if you will.
You can't triangulate.
Yeah.
Well, there's people, no, we don't think there's other people on other
Wouldn't it be
planets.
great when we get to heaven and we just ask God and He can just tell us?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Well, but then you won't worry about that stuff.
I know. That's the
It'll be
important
Yeah,
thing.
so what?
Can you see, I can see it now in heaven, Trivia Pursuit.
Yeah.
What a great game.
I love it.
Again, this shows what they call inflation, or so-called explosion, when all these pieces come together, and galaxies and atoms being formed, and ultimately we have planets and stars and galaxies where we are now. Now, interesting. I start to question this. You notice here, you can read this, in 380,000 years since the beginning of expansion, it says that this is 9/10,000ths, the universe is 9/10,000ths of its present size. Here it's gone to 10% of its present size. Change over there, it's almost 3/4 of its present size. So somehow, just for this purpose of this illustration, somebody has defined the size of the universe now versus what it was then. Now again, I would argue that's probably based on some concept of expansion. How quickly is this thing getting big? So size is relative. It's comparing it to its present size. And as I said, it's continually expanding. So this is a changing yardstick, if you will. That you know that birds were once dinosaurs. This is a situation where once was a predator, now becomes prey. Here, I think that I like this one from the standpoint of representation of time since Earth was created, if you will. And we roll up 570 million years in 1 hour, represented by a 12-hour clock. Okay, Earth is formed up here at midnight. We get fish in the first hour, land plants, other insects come along. And interesting, we, you obviously are big fans of Flintstone, Fred Flintstone, and know that he was being chased by dinosaurs. Dinosaurs pre-existed man. Man did not have to deal with dinosaurs.
They were dead and gone?
They were gone.
Were they?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Now, he may have had a saber-toothed tiger to wrestle with, but dinosaurs pre-existed man.
So who came up with the Jurassic period? Because the movies are fairly recent.
Oh, the Jurassic period that's true. Those animals lived at that time, but man was not involved in that theater.
Yeah, that was all made up.
Man shows up just before
Midnight.
midnight. Very late comer. We had a lot of stuff going on Earth before man shows up, screws everything up.
Well, and that fits, you know, nothing, of course, nothing in, like, is exact, meaning from the story of creation and science as we know it right now, I mean, it's not like they fit exactly, but if you look at, we came about day 6.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That was it.
So
Almost an afterthought.
so you can arm wrestle about what a day is. You can you know go crazy about that. But man came, if you're 6 periods of time, you know 7 being the rest. We came at the end.
Right. Day 6, creation.
Yeah.
Let's see, I think I'm going to skip through because I'm just summarizing what you saw in Shark Town.
What does that mean at the bottom? Can you go back for a second?
Sure.
What does it mean at the bottom? The earliest instant of the Big Bang expansion is still an area of open investigation.
The issue of what was going on just prior to that.
Before the Big Bang happened.
Before the Big Bang. And also, if you want to call it, in that very small, minute amount of time, we can argue about what the rate of expansion was. So, there are some variations in what I'll call the math model that speaks to that, but for the most part, scientists shrugged that off. They said, well, we still know that pretty much the primordial soup that resulted from that. We can argue about if that was 10 to the 43rd
Yeah.
or 10 to the 48th. And that's kind of the argument they've had.
From a theology standpoint, it's in the beginning,
That's right.
and then comma, God created the heavens and the earth.
No, that's what that earliest instant is right before that.
Yeah, so
God
what
said-
happened, you know, before in the beginning?
God was there.
Sorry, I don't mean to keep asking the questions.
Yes, you do.
Okay, let's go to, because my mind just immediately thought of course, the flood, which wiped out everything except for what was on the ark. Where does that show up? I mean, do you have that somewhere on your, because everything disappeared.
Science does not put much stock in the
In the
flood.
flood, I figured that.
Okay.
There have been periods where there's been significant, what I'll call rainfall, and we see evidence of that, but not to the point where it covers the entire earth.
Isn't there geology, archaeology? I miss the TED guy.
Yeah, you
tried
missed
to
that
watch
show
him
on that.
YouTube.
Yeah.
But isn't there,
How it cut through the line.
and for example, even looking at the Grand Canyon, which took how many tons
Right.
and tons of years, and so there's all those layers, and
Well, the Colorado River has been working it for a long time, and it's just carved it out.
And this is where you'll get, this is the great sort of
Debate. Yeah.
and it's healthy.
it's healthy.
I mean, it's healthy from the standpoint of from a biblical standpoint. The scripture says there was a flood, that flood covered the entire earth.
No,
Okay.
Well, it could have been just the entire earth that those people.
No. I think if you take the Bible from that aspect, as God, let the Bible speak for what the Bible says.
That bird to finally come back with the
Yeah,
leaf.
but again, take the Bible for what the Bible says, and it says there was a global flood. Okay, now that's what the Bible says. You have people, scientists on this camp, scientists on this camp, that will look at the same data and say it wasn't global, it was global. Great. Talk about it. Figure it out. What you have to do from a study of God's Word standpoint is where do you want to place your stake?
Stake in the ground.
Where are you going
I
to put
knew
your
you were
stake in the
gonna
ground
say that.
based off the Scripture? Because you can go with the Scripture that says there was a global flood, and you can look at the science from that worldview and say, yes, I see where there was a global flood, and you have scientists, the one we showed the other week, that says yes. Then you have scientists over here that say, well, no. You know what? What do you want to believe in? You know, and it's good to discuss it, because I that's the kind of stuff that just makes you grow. You either believe in the scripture more, or you believe in science.
Yeah.
And both are, in a lot of ways, faith-based, but you've got very smart people on both ends of the spectrum. And you can respect both ends of it, because they're all trying to figure it out. Sorry.
Yeah, well, and that's true. Also from the scientific point of view, we know that at some point in time the Earth was completely covered with water.
Yeah.
We also know that we had very little oxygen in the atmosphere. Could not sustain life. And it's because now the relationship between water and the atmosphere is very critical, as you well know. So much we believe, science believes, much of that water was sucked up in the atmosphere, and it's changed the entire composition of the atmosphere. And as a consequence, the water level goes down. And just as Chris said, you can go almost anywhere in the world and find evidence of water had been there at some time. Did that come from the flood? Yeah, but it also could have come from the fact that at some point in time the Earth was completely covered with water. So dating that is really tough. Now geologists, you're right, have a field day with that.
Oh, because the geologists that we looked at took you to the Grand Canyon and said stuff that I don't understand.
Oh, I know. It's
Yeah.
still too quickly. The water went quickly through and didn't go slow through something.
Well, and
That was not-
that's sort of
Does
that.
it really matter though in the end?
Well, remember what the Bible is.
I mean, does it matter?
And that's I want to keep his time going, but
Yeah.
remember what the Bible is. The Bible is God's message to you on redemptive history. It's not meant to be a science book, although the science that's there, if read correctly and interpreted correctly, doesn't contradict.
Yeah.
But it's meant to show the redemption history of our relationship with God. And honestly, you can take it literally in that way, because again, you go back to creation, 6 days of creation. Well, the word in Hebrew for day talks about the light to darkness. Well, that's great, but also light wasn't created. That rotation of that wasn't created until day 4.
It wasn't.
So then look at the flood. The flood talks about that the waters of the deep and the waters from above sprung open. Okay. Well, wait a second here now. Waters from beneath sprang open. There is science to prove that one. That there's a massive amount of water underneath the ground.
Were you in class with Mark when we talked about that in Genesis?
No.
Oh, it was 2 weeks ago? He was talking about that, how that contradiction happens, Mark said.
Yeah.
Said the same thing you. It's not,
What's-
the Bible isn't a science book yet, however.
There
is science that proves it.
Yeah.
But it's the history. It was really interesting what he was telling us. We were talking about Genesis and the contradiction there of the creation.
Now I'll tell you, there's no contradiction in the Bible. But we'll arm wrestle.
I'm going to touch on this piece here. You've heard of dark matter. Interesting.
This is a way for science to get out of a lot of dilemma. The universe has a lot of objects in it. Obviously, it's very populated, and it's held together in a really strange, organized fashion. But we recognize the fact that gravity is what the only known force we have, cannot account for the fact that this stuff is holding together as well as it is. So what scientists said, there's spooky stuff out there, we'll call it dark matter. That accounts for how the universe is organized and how it's stable. And so, interesting, when the Earth was formed, we had a fairly good notion that much of the stuff out there was what we call dark matter. Those are the building blocks of the universe when it first began. Excuse me. But now, all that dark matter, much of it has been converted into dark energy.
That's the glue, if you will, that holds the universe together. This stuff over here, atoms, makes up 5% of the universe. Atoms is the one that's responsible for gravity. So 5% of what we know is holding the universe together, but there's this whole bunch of other stuff out there that is really spooky from the science perspective. We don't know what it is.
I do. Hebrews 1:3.
Oh, Hebrews, okay.
And he is the radiance of his glory and the exact representation of his nature, and upholds all things by the word of his power.
There it is. We got him. Noble warrior.
Holy dark matter.
But isn't it amazing though? Because one of the things that we talk about, and I don't know how the Catholic perspective is. I know the Protestant perspective has gotten away from it, but the charismatics have brought it back in, which is this idea of not being scared of the invisible realm.
Yes.
The unseen realm. Well, shoot, when you put that graph up there, it's like, let's look at it.
Yeah, that's
I'm
the evil part,
probably
right?
I'm probably not saying this correctly, or maybe I am.
Dark as evil.
Okay, so 63% of the universe is dark matter,
Yes.
and so 47% is not. Well, I'll sit there and say, again, very uneducated, but that tells me that 37? Okay, thank you. 37% is the visible realm,
Yes.
and 63%
Well,
is the
and
invisible
that is
realm.
right, because we don't have any instruments that can measure that stuff.
The spiritual realm.
Yeah.
Okay, that was Hebrews what?
Hebrews
So
1:3.
why did they change, tell me again, from dark matter to dark energy? Why did they change the name?
It's a different substance. It
Because
really
it
is.
just changed.
It just changed.
It is conversion of matter into energy,
Okay, it actually was energy.
which is Einstein talked about that.
Einstein.
E equals mc squared.
MC squared?
Yeah.
Oh, energy.
So that we're
Oh, I
saying,
see.
okay, some of that stuff has gone
Still
on.
teaching
It's
that.
being
MC
converted.
squared, I see.
Well, and you've heard of dark holes.
Yeah, dark holes.
Yes.
Or black
And-
holes, black holes you hear.
Well, black hole,
Yeah,
but
same.
that's one and the same.
Okay.
And so we
So the
think
same thing.
that is actually part of the dark
Dark matter.
world.
We like to call it the spiritual realm.
Heaven is on the other side of a wormhole. No. It's fun from the standpoint that there's a lot of stuff out there we don't know.
Yeah, we
Okay,
know.
and
Well,
we got a long way to go to school.
There's a lot of stuff on Earth that I don't understand either, so I don't know if they're before or out, but.
Okay, we're going to get into how old the Earth, and of course, origin of man is based on the origin of the Earth, so they're all tied together. And one of the things that's interesting, you ask a European in 1600 how old the Earth was, he can say it's about 6,000 years old. That was the current thinking of the time.
Well, did they think the Earth was flat then?
No, interesting.
1600.
That is
I
a
mean-
stupid phenomenon that modern man has come
Yeah.
up with. It's amazing how many the Egyptians
They knew.
knew, the Greeks knew the Earth was round and measured
Because
it.
they studied, they also had a study of the stars and everything, didn't they?
Exactly. I mean, these guys were sharp. But the fact that ancient times knew the Earth was round.
But you didn't have the communication. How you gonna do it? Send it by bird?
Yeah.
To say, hey, I know.
Well, the way they did this
That's it.
is
Tell people, yeah.
one of the Greeks actually put up a pole of a fixed height, okay?
Mhm.
And he had two identical poles about 100 miles apart. And he was able to measure the length of the shadow of the two different poles. And from that, he computed the curvature of the Earth and the circumference.
Were you talking
Man, it's
about?
amazing.
Or was Mark?
Well, so there's
Go ahead.
there's a couple of things that when you speak about the Bible and you talk about the Tower of Babel. Well, the Tower of Babel they think was in essence
A sundial?
well, it's like a pyramid type thing.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, when God confounded them and spread them out, all of a sudden, that's when all of these little pyramids start showing up around the whole world. And if you look at the sophistication with the stars of that you have to understand that there's a radius to the earth to make that all line up. They were the ancients were very, very attuned to nature and understanding
Yes.
the radius of the earth and how the sun worked with it. Honestly, much more than we probably had been for a long time, you know, which is very cool, you know.
If you fast forward to 1900, a European would have said the earth is ancient. Got away from this finite 10,000 year stuff. And also, the Noah's flood issue evaporated. They didn't put much stock in that.
Was that a pun?
Yeah, but you're the Nobel laureate.
Nobel laureate.
And again, they would tend to shrug off
And
Genesis
sure,
as
Genesis
being a allegory.
not literally.
Well, and what's interesting with that is that also fits with basically the attacks of the Bible, because in the 1800s, all of a sudden, this question of the inerrancy of the Bible, the literalness of the Bible
Yes.
is coming to play. So what happens is, what you're seeing in science and in history
Yeah.
matches the thought process of what's going on even in basically church history.
Right, that's right. Biblical scholars, saying Adam was born, what, 4,500 BC?
Well, it's Usher's dating.
And Usher in 1640 says the earth was created, what, in 4,000 BC?
And
I like this guy says, man, day one was October 23. I think that was a Tuesday.
well, and it's, you know, whenever you start putting Usher's dating, for the most part, even with biblical scholars, is like,
Yeah.
seriously, dude, because you got a couple of things that are very, very problematic when you try to put dates and times together throughout history. There wasn't a common time until what?
Calendar,
When is the Gregorian calendar that we use now? That was
Gregorian, no. That was Gregory, the Pope Gregory.
that's
No,
That was probably,
we had that in Sunday school class the other day too.
let's see.
Gregorian calendar.
I was going to say about 700.
Yeah, it was before 1,000. I think
Yeah.
it was before 1,000.
so. I mean, because we run into the problem even with the Bible. The Hebrew year is 30
different.
day months,
Yeah.
which doesn't
Than ours.
work. You know what I mean? From the
Well, and they also
Yes,
took
I
the
sure did.
genealogies, right, that went all the way back to Adam and tried to add that
And
time.
that's what Usher did.
Yeah,
is
that's
take,
what-
he took the genealogies, but the problem with the genealogies is they're not written from a chronological standpoint, meaning they skip generations
Yes.
in that cases. So to try to
It's
put
not
the
entirely serial.
you can't put the age of man by the genealogies of the Bible, because that's not what the genealogies were meant for in the Bible. And that's what Usher tried to do with the dating.
So it says he was Archbishop
Archbishop.
Armagh and Primate.
Yeah.
Of all, what is that?
Ireland.
Ireland.
I
Church
mean,
of
he's
Ireland.
Archbishop, that's the Catholic Church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Catholic Church.
But what's the Armagh, whatever?
That's the
Primate?
towns. Those are the towns in Ireland.
Yeah.
I guess some of them.
Yeah.
Towns.
The Primate of all is capitalized, all Ireland.
Yeah, primate means the chief bishop,
Oh, well, okay.
not primate as an ape.
Oh.
It's not a primate as in
Yeah.
an ape. Well,
No,
that's-
not.
So he was,
Chief,
Archbishop.
primate means the principal.
he lived in Armagh and then he was
Yeah,
primate
so
of all Ireland. So
he was
lived
the
in one
Archbishop
town.
of Armagh, which is a town, and he was basically the head bishop of all of Ireland.
Correct, right.
Just take the primate and say big dude.
Yes.
Wow.
Big
It's
guy.
interesting though that they're called a primate.
Well, that means he's first.
Pri-
The
primary.
best.
No,
The best.
it's still interesting that
Oh.
that would be what the
Okay,
word
okay.
they would use, to describe it. Okay, sure, I'll go look him up.
Buffon says 75,000 years old. Interesting that ancient Egyptian theory comes at 40,000 BC, and Greeks corrected that later to make it 50,000 BC.
Oh,
Because it's associated with their ruling, right? That's when they ruled versus
no,
when.
BC.
Oh, no.
No, this is BC.
Well, Egyptians ruled before,
Yeah.
before the Greeks.
Yes.
Right, but this is, they're talking about.
But again, just simply show, hey, people have been thinking about this for some time. And they've come up with some fairly good numbers, and there's a lot of, obviously, data
Yeah.
that they would use to substantiate this. But us guys know the correct answer is 4.5 billion years old. Plus or minus.
Plus or minus that.
Plus or minus 4 billion.
50 billion years, right?
A billion here and a billion there.
And interesting, we've dug up fossils that are 4.4 billion years old.
Oh, really?
And that's only a couple of weeks away from beginning of Earth. You know, this stuff is really
Well,
old.
so I have yet to figure out young Earth or old Earth because honestly, from a biblical standpoint, I don't really care.
I know you didn't.
You know what I mean? But I was definitely impressed with the fact that our carbon dating, which is the method that we use to tell the age,
Right.
is not infallible.
Correct. This is interesting. Landmass. This is the entire landmass of the world. Yeah, of the Earth, I should say, not the world. Yeah, of the Earth. In obviously prehistoric times. You can see the pieces as they're going to unfold. Okay. I'm trying to think. What's the time frame here? This is about 300 million years ago.
You mean as they break off or what?
Yeah, they're going to start separating
Yeah.
because tectonic plates are going to move.
Right, okay.
So this is the way the landmass started. The rest of the stuff out there is water. So this is the only land in town.
Oh, good.
Now this is the same map drawn out with, of course, all the countries as we now know them.
And you know what's interesting? What's in the middle? The
Jerusalem.
Middle East.
The Middle
Yeah,
East is.
right.
Sure.
Well, and where did man start?
Middle East. Yeah.
Africa.
Well, yeah, which would have been.
Well,
yeah.
You're right.
Because now I'm going to play the
Devil's
not the devil's advocate because we're going to keep this church related, but I'm going to play the other side, which is the geologist that we followed the other day agrees with this.
Yes.
Where they differ is in this idea of paradigm shifts. They'll tell you that the flood and everything that went around it is what moved this landmass to where it was. So it's very interesting that scientists with the millions of years and the way that the landmass was formed don't necessarily from a way it happened, meaning that it was this
mechanics.
the mechanics of it. They don't disagree too much. What they don't agree with is time and causation. I guess.
Causation.
Which again, arm wrestle over it.
This is
What is that word? PANGEN?
that's the name they applied to this
Yep.
landmass.
Yes.
An artificial name, if you will.
Yep.
Again, now we're starting to separate some of the actual landmass. This is 250 million years ago. The one you saw there, they're still together. This is 300. So 50 million years, we're starting to see some separation. And now even more. Previous one was 250, now we're another 50 million years. You're starting to see the South America break apart. Africa coming out.
Oh, look at that.
Downstairs you got Australia. This is the Jurassic age, still though, we've got a lot of the separation starting to happen. Tectonic plates are moving. Why? Again, the theory is we're sitting on a bed of molten lava, and we have a lot of tectonic flow as a consequence of volcanic action. And we do have volcanoes very active during this period of time. Now we're getting very current, only 65 million years ago. We're starting to see the land masses obviously being formed. And here's where we are today. And you can play the puzzle game and put these pieces back together and say, yeah, I can kind of see how that would fit. Not absurd at all. So you can see Africa fits very nicely in this chunk here.
Well, plus, I mean, they even see it with the migration patterns of different animals and things like that, and people.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I don't know if people necessarily, but
no, you're right.
Because
oh, you were talking about animal migration?
Certain animals live in certain areas.
But there actually is same kind of patterns you see with people migration.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Okay, this is a quick timeline of different species and organisms being formed.
I'm sorry, the first one I thought was simple cell phone. I was like, wow, Apple's been at it for a while.
Interesting, those creatures are still relevant today. Yeah, but they were the very first living organism. And of course it took 200,000 years, even million years, I guess, to develop photosynthesis, which is obviously very key to our life now. Complex cells, simple animals. This is a big breakthrough. An animal that has a front and a back.
A horse, a cow.
Well,
has a
a
skeleton
worm,
in its
for
spine.
example, does not have a front or a back.
A what?
A front or a back.
What
A
animal?
worm.
A worm.
Oh,
So
no.
it's a different structure now,
and
having
you
an
have a
actual
skeleton.
front.
Yes.
You have a skeleton.
That's a big breakthrough, because man's going to need a front and a back. In fact, all ambulatory animals will need a front and a back, so that's going to be key. Any mobility is going to
snake
require
doesn't have
a
a
front
front
and a
No, they
back.
don't. They were for the creatures
Mhm.
Now, fish and other amphibians also come pretty late in the game. They're coming from single-cell organisms and moving up the evolutionary chain, so to speak. So we've got fish and other amphibians, prototype amphibians, and after that, we have land plants actually coming into being. So we have fish predating land vegetation. There's nothing to eat, so why you want to go up on the land?
I know.
Again, the atmosphere is very hot. There was very little going on in terms of actual vegetation you see now. And moving in, we got amphibians, reptiles, mammals, birds showing up, flowers,
Where are we?
primates. Now we're starting to see ancestors come up. If you're with evolution. Great apes, which is also very closely related to us. And finally, man shows up. Just 2.5 million years ago. He's a late arrival.
You said that before.
Someone just told me about the party going on here right now. And the anatomical human that we know now is also very recent. 200,000 years old. So this is, again, very abbreviated timeline of evolution, but this is when these creatures and organisms came into being from a scientific point of view.
And you're using, and I want to see if I get this correct. You're using the word evolution a little bit different than Darwinian evolution.
Yes, yes, I am. Right.
Okay, which from what you're saying here, the evolution is more the progression
Correct.
Because the thing that I will totally disagree with evolution is that, from a Darwinian standpoint, is that a kind or classification, that there's changes within that.
Right.
But from everything to start from one thing and then change to different kinds.
Correct.
That word evolution.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to use it in that fashion.
Yeah,
That's not
that's a hijack.
we did not come from a tree seed or anything like that.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Let's see. Oh, this is a mammal ancestry tree. You probably can't read it.
No.
Obviously, common ancestor goes that way. This is just mammals now. So at the very, very top up here is a duck-billed platypus. Let me just read. Got a possum, a mole, another kind of possum, an elephant shrew, and then an elephant itself. Manatee, armadillo right here, bat, a horse. Oh, this is a horse rhino. Okay. A rabbit, rat and a mouse, beaver, squirrel, guinea pig, lemurs, New World monkeys, we're getting close now, Old World monkeys, and working our way down, orangutan, gorilla, and a human right here. Humans are very closely related to bonobos and a common chimpanzee. You've heard this before. We share a lot of genes in common with chimpanzees.
But wouldn't that make sense? Again, I do not believe that we're ancestors of a chimp.
Okay.
All right.
You're not buying it.
I'm not buying that. But what I would say, though, is that it would make total sense for us to share those common attributes because we're in a common environment.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So we're, in that sense, a victim or consequence of environment.
Well, I think God put us on this earth, and there's a reason that, there's this kind of mammal and this kind of mammal. We all share certain things.
Yes.
Okay. But that's just by design versus by chance.
Okay.
And yet, we are uniquely, from the tiniest little creature that we can hardly see, was created specifically within its group,
Right.
with the capability to do things that just blow my mind.
So yes, absolutely.
I mean,
so
we're
what I'm getting at with is, if we are to take the Bible, I want to say literally, but I don't want to get that tight, but I will get that tight. Like, if we're to take God's word for what it says, we are made in His image, and
Yes.
there's a divine spark in that. Now, that being said, it would make so much sense that within our higher classification, mammal, that we share certain characteristics with an ape, with a chimpanzee. But God made us, He made them, and we should be similar.
Okay.
How would you buy that? Because this comes across very much Darwin, from a progression standpoint, from an evolution
So what does that
primary
mean,
monk.
Ed, that it keeps going down now, just how they were created, what came first, what came
Well,
second? What's all the
This
lines out?
suggests
The
that
lines out,
all these mammals
yeah.
came from a common source. Okay. By environment or Darwin's evolutionary means, we had differentiation coming about. For example, that where am I? Oh, duck-billed platypus broke off into something else, which then gave birth to these two lines, which in turn gave birth to other lines.
Yeah.
So there was variation going on, but all came from a common ancestor.
Going back to what Chris said, though, the line of the creation story about man is the only one God breathed the breath of life into.
Yep.
So that did differentiate from all the other.
Well, and
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
My personal belief is we did come from apes, from that line. What is, to me, the big mystery or article of faith is at some point God steps in and gives that creature a soul.
Okay. Yep. And we have gone through this, from a systematic theology standpoint.
So,
Yeah.
in that sense, God interfered, if you want to call it,
Mhm.
injected. But up to that point, an ape, if you will, or Neanderthal man, and question, I can't even hypothesize, was Neanderthal man a human in our sense, from the standpoint, did he have a soul? I don't know.
Because
Now, we know he had a brain, and that's I guess, a key feature. We know that these creatures, we'll see in the short term, had terrific craniums. I mean, they had terrific brain power. And that's always been the mark of a human being. His brain is much bigger than that of an ape. Ape has strength. We've got, quote, intelligence. We use it obviously poorly, but so
Thank you.
I don't want to equate intelligence with soul. But somewhere along the line,
Did they learn to make a fire before they had
Yeah.
a soul, or after?
well, that's just it. And you can't evolve a soul.
Yeah.
That's antithetical.
yeah, because and we're all come from a purely biblical standpoint. Because what we went through a couple of weeks ago is
What you're saying.
the two things that secularism teaches, which is secular theology and then theistic evolution. Theistic evolution is trying to take, if you look at creationism, secular theology, and then theistic evolution, what theistic evolution is trying to do is take secular evolution and try to combine them versus straight creationism. And yeah, that's where the difference is coming. The Gruden's very good in his book to, in some ways, how can I put it? Well, I'll just put it bluntly. Make a little bit of light of theistic evolution by saying, well, if you believe in theistic evolution, then what you're saying is it took God a lot of tries to get it right.
But I don't think that's far-fetched.
Okay.
Because you might argue, in fact, I've done this in a seminar, I've argued that the angels was a failed attempt.
Interesting. Okay.
And man is so-called a second act.
It does say the angels are lower than us.
The other way, right?
Oh, okay. Well, okay. We're going to get into angels coming up here soon. What it says is God was made lower than the angels, and that comes from Hebrews.
God was made.
I'm sorry,
No,
Jesus.
Jesus
Jesus was made lower than the angels.
Right.
And understand too that angels fell, and God did not provide a way of redemption for the angels, but He did for man.
That's
And
why they
then
say what
when
they say.
man finally gets redeemed, angels, we actually go above angels in the pecking order. But we'll get to that. Come to that,
I
Clay.
never heard that. I never heard that.
Yeah,
They
come
said
back
that
and talk about the
yet.
angels.
That's the failed angels. Go ahead.
I'm going to get into this notion about mitochondria, the DNA that's passed on by the mother only. Interesting, there was a study done, pretty good study in the 80s, looking at DNA samples from women around the world, and they came up with this ancestral chart. Notice here, everything starts with this point here. All the other indigenous areas all come from this central ancestor. And you can see the branching out of this particular point here.
And see, I'll tell you from a biblical standpoint, I'm like, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I'll sit there and tell you that is proof of the Tower of Babel, where they were all one people
Yeah.
after the flood, and then because language is a big thing that we don't think about, but when He confounded their language and He spread the people all out, well, yeah, they're now environment does play a role.
Yes.
And now they are developing different. That's
Yeah,
that's
they
where we
They
get
take on the differences.
different things from all these different
The people.
regions of the
Yeah,
earth.
and the different people.
Am I?
So that
No,
area
that-
was where, and that
Say again?
it's from the Middle East?
Yeah.
No,
Africa.
out of Africa.
Middle East.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
listed right here.
And you got if you look at the Middle East and you look back where those land masses were all together, that they're very close together.
Yeah.
You know, from a migration standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, again, based on a genetic sequence of 190 people, shows a common female ancestor coming from Africa
And it's,
about 170 to 250,000 years ago,
No word.
all out of Africa.
Okay.
That's the name of
That'd be a good name for a movie. But see,
Straight.
but see, I look at that and say, I totally
I
agree with
agree,
that because that would make the Tower of Babel make
Yeah.
very much sense because
Yeah, farms.
how did all of a sudden we start here and then
Scattered.
went out
And
like
people
that?
were everywhere, where they weren't before.
Also, there is, of course, man has the unique capability to pass on a Y chromosome.
Yeah.
And they did a very similar study. This woman that passes on the X chromosome, we're going to call her African Eve, and
African Eve.
and the male is going to be, of course, the Adam associated with that. Interesting. Eve lived about 200,000 years ago. Got to trace that far back. And Adam is somewhere, it's much more fuzzy, between 240 and 580,000 years ago. So we have a common ancestor identified through DNA analysis, but they did not live in the same time frame. So they're not necessarily the Adam and Eve. It's just that we are able to trace it back to a single individual, or at least a family trait, if you will, that came out of Africa, but maybe in different time frames.
See, I've wondered about that because in the Bible it tells about, and these people married over here, these people married, and I'm thinking, but it just all started with Adam and Eve, if that's the way it's, there had to be other people
Yeah,
around.
well, they married their sister and
Well,
brother.
That's right.
I
So
mean,
what-
that's easy in
one
cousins.
one thing, you know, with it, you got a bunch of time things. I mean, first of all, okay, they probably all came from Adam and Eve, all right, but we don't know. The Bible says nothing about how long of a period of time
Yeah,
Adam was
first.
on this
Right.
earth before Eve was.
He just simply said, God knows that he's alone.
Yeah. So I mean,
He was
so
lonely.
Took me a lot of time to figure that out.
so when you sit
Yeah.
here and you try to correspond
Right.
science and the Bible, what happens is you get people that say it's 24 hours and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, okay. All right, that's very easy to do. In fact, if you look on the last page of the outline, it sits there and says it's very easy to sit there and say, I can take when I take all of this young Earth theory and all of this old Earth theory, I can sit there and say, well, it's a lot easier to say 24 hours.
Yeah, right.
All right, it is a lot easier to say
It
24
fits
hours.
nicely.
It
We
fits.
didn't even
It
know
fits
24
nicely.
hours.
But the Bible nowhere talks about time.
No, it never.
All right. What happens with theologians will go over, and we did too, the word in the Hebrew that says day, and that word in the Hebrew that says day means day. I mean, it does. But the night and the morning were the first day. And again, there was no night and morning.
So how do you know when you trace that? How do you get that age? Like 200,000 years ago.
Because of the number of changes in the generation, so you can actually track
Scientifically, you can.
scientifically the changes in the DNA.
My word. Yeah, we've only had DNA. I mean,
Yeah.
we never studied DNA. We didn't even know it was in science.
I mean, if you
Never
get
had it.
somebody that
Did you have
really,
DNA in high school?
yeah,
Barely.
but listen,
Son
I don't
did.
understand
Well,
that
yeah.
at all. But what you
didn't even know what
the
it was.
miracle of DNA is the complexity of it. Really, I'm gonna come at it from intelligent design being God. Someone created that because it is so complex and such a beautiful thing. That, I mean, if you ever get a chance to hear someone that actually like really understands the in-depth part of the biology part of it, I mean, it is a beautiful, beautiful creation that is immensely, we don't even know a tenth of it. It's amazing.
No, I didn't know you could do that. That's
We talked about some of the genetic migration. Here is the so-called Eve, African Eve, and African Adam, and how their DNA has migrated over time. Not necessarily people, but DNA. And you see here, Adam spun off these 3 strings. Some of them, of course, went over to America. Some went down to Australia. And there's a piece that goes over, a branch, if you will, that goes over into Europe. Eve takes a different route, much more prolific. See, different strains actually go in different areas. This is just DNA movement, if you will, not necessarily people's. Of course, people were carrying DNA.
carrying the DNA.
Yeah. But again, it speaks to the fact that this is how it spread over the entire, everything, again, coming out of Africa, the Adam and Eve. Again, not necessarily contemporary, but over time it just glosses over that. This is actually how humans have actually migrated. Now this is what looks like anatomically correct modern man. Again, coming out of Africa here, making the migration over the Bering Strait, coming into America, and obviously the foundation for Native Americans.
And let me show it to you real quick, because again, what this is showing, Babylon is
Right there.
no, it's actually
It's
just
right
a little bit
up
farther
there,
up.
up there.
But, I mean,
So close.
you know,
In Babylon.
we're not in this big disagreement with
Oh, I
science.
agree, yeah.
Not at all. You know, which
Island agreement.
yeah, I mean,
I have a question.
No.
No.
I'm
That
sorry.
that can't
I've
be.
held it back as long as I can. Okay.
I'm making this up.
The chart before showed us the one before the DNA.
DNA
from
migration.
Africa.
Yeah.
And if that chart is correct, then my question is, why have we, as people, why did we go through the middle of why were blacks considered non-human beings, not having, if we evolved from that, from that place, then why have we treated people that supposedly we came from?
Are you kidding me? Are you asking that question?
Yes, I'm answering that.
That's a fair question, but
If we have evolved from that, why would we turn around and ditch
the whole basis of racism.
you want to take a crack at it? Look,
Yeah,
at the end of the day,
We're racist.
we're all okay. If you want to take the Christian, the Judeo-Christian viewpoint of this, we are all.
That's not the viewpoint
I know,
I
but-
asked. I was asking specifically if you believed in evolution
Okay.
and that chart was
Oh.
accurate, then how because not everyone is a Christian in the world.
True.
How did we get to that point where?
Well, and I'll assume the role of the we that you're talking about there. I think there are obviously a class of people who believe that those who do not look like I do,
Yeah.
or do not believe like I do, are inferior. Okay.
Mhm.
Somehow that justifies my persecution, my treatment of them as non-fellow humans.
That's just
Even
bad.
quote, with a Christian attitude, people behave in that fashion.
They did.
Well, do-
I can't justify that based on DNA.
No.
But I guess I can justify that based on the fact that you came in as a slave,
Yeah.
and I'll admit to the fact I picked you up, I bought you, and so therefore you're just property to me, and you don't deserve anything.
I understand that.
But
And
that-
maybe
that-
my question was stupid, but I'm trying to, if I believed in evolution, and I believed that, you know, with that chart from before, I'm trying to figure
Well,
out.
that's a big caveat though.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in evolution, if you don't believe in DNA migration or something of nature, then you're perfectly justified to treat blacks as subhuman.
Or whoever.
What?
You know,
Or whomever.
The Native Americans.
Anybody that's not
Anybody's.
look like me is,
And I can.
Well,
inferior.
go back to what we talked about many eons ago, which is there are 4 things that create your worldview: origin, morality,
Morality,
Right.
purpose,
and
destination. You know,
Yeah.
destiny.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's-
So you got those 4 things that you have to fit your worldview into. If you are a strict secular evolutionary, well, shoot, if I come straight out of this,
Yeah.
how do I get my purpose? How do I get my morality? Where am I
I
going?
don't get it.
Okay, but take the question that, to go back to your question and simplify it to the utmost simple thing. It comes down to the one word that created sin in the world: pride.
Oh, great.
The
Well,
fall
and
of
it's-
Satan is because of
Yeah.
pride.
It's
If
with
I
all of
think,
anyone.
yeah, if I think you have less value than me,
Me.
it's because I have more pride in me.
Yep.
You know, and that's
It's easy to
that's like highly simplistic, but
No,
pride is what drives racism. Pride is what drives a lot of you know.
Yeah,
You're prejudiced.
Is what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, it is.
and Judy, I would say that was your question. Why do we have prejudice in the world?
Yeah.
Why are some people prejudiced?
Why do we
If you
treat people like
believe in this, which
Why
I
do-
guess by definition they don't,
No, I don't.
then again,
But I'm in my mind, I'm understanding that by evolution, that the next step on that chart came from that group before them, and so on and so on and
right,
so on.
right,
And,
it's progression.
I would have hoped that maybe that would have kept people from being stupid, but I guess not.
We're being stupid.
Stupid is
We're being
endemic.
sinful. I think it's sinful is the
Damn
one.
thick stupid.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's stupid or if it's sinful. There's
And-
a lot of people are smart.
Of course, over time, the different strains of humans also mix. See, I got a Neanderthal human, I got a Homo erectus and a Homo sapiens, and this is how they interbred.
Yeah.
And you probably have heard this, I think this quote discovery came out maybe about 10 years ago. Through DNA analysis, you all are Neanderthals. You actually have Neanderthal DNA.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, that explains why we actually.
There's the answer to your question, right
Yeah,
there.
answer my question.
Now, we know that
It's in my DNA.
we're reasonably sure Neanderthals weren't the brightest kid on the block. He was certainly the strongest. You notice that species died out.
Well, yeah, because the guy clubbed the woman on the head, dragged her into the cave, and that was it.
So much for
First case
romance.
of domestic violence.
Yeah, there's only one of the species up there that survived. The Homo sapiens.
We're now much better.
I just
This goes back to the same thing here.
I know, we don't believe in that, do we?
This is again, the extinct species 13 million ago. This is where we think our common ancestor came from. And I know Chris is not buying this, but again, we're a branch off her, but chimpanzees and bonobos. Interesting, all these guys have the same number of chromosomes
But we
and pairs. We don't.
Uh-uh.
And that's one of the reasons we're distinct, and we have some of the characteristics that those other guys don't. Mainly vocalization.
And doesn't that,
We're able to speak.
and doesn't that get us into trouble?
Yeah, that's where all that pride comes in.
Neanderthal.
Well, no, don't you think about thinking process?
Here is pretty much the same tree though, also some characterization of what these guys look like. There's some pretty mean looking dudes, man. You don't want to meet these guys in the alley. Again, where'd you come up with this? Well, these are obviously recreations based on skulls. Okay, we don't have too many photographs of these people, but these are going to be characterizations of what they look like, and again, what our common ancestry is. Again, here's some of these strains and the fact that they obviously coexisted. Not necessarily they came from one another, but a lot of these coexisted at the same time. Because we know that Neanderthals coexisted with some of the upright walking humans, and the species died out. More clever, hunting the same game, how that happened. And we know that's probably the case. In many situations, as I said, the Neanderthals weren't really sharp, and it's entirely possible that the much more mobile and much more creative, you want thinking humans outfoxed the guys, took all the game. They interbred, but the species has still died out. I was trying to think who this guy looks like.
I was trying to say, I've seen one.
Don't be giving me any TV character. Here's Lucy compared to a modern female size. And you see the colored portion, of course, is the only bone structure we actually have from Lucy.
Yeah, you have to recreate.
So the rest of it's reconstructed by definition.
I'm sorry, what are the two skeletons?
Yeah.
One's a
The one on the short kid is Lucy,
woman and the other one's Lucy.
a modern day woman.
Modern day woman.
Oh, got it.
So
got it,
Lucy
okay.
was obviously much shorter. I think, I'm trying to remember, this so-called woman here, I think is about 5'5", so Lucy was a little over 3
I
something.
was gonna say 5'6" is.
Yeah.
So it's about 5'6" and a half.
With
It's
heels.
the average. The average.
heels? Was that about the average?
I think that's the average woman. Is
Here is pretty much the life forms. Again, representation here of oldest rock. This is what remember I told you before about rise of atmospheric oxygen. Prior to this time, we were very oxygen deplete atmosphere, had less than 1% oxygen. Human life could not have existed at that time. Again, man shows up very late here, after dinosaurs. Also,
I didn't realize that.
this is the oldest oldest organism we have. This is actually one of the fossils we have. It's so small that we actually overlooked it for a long period of time.
What is it?
It's one of these guys right here.
Trilobite.
Trilobite?
Puckerutic fossil. 1.5 inch long.
And these came from where?
These were found in Australia. Fossils.
Where?
Oh, and rock. Is that what you're asking?
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I thought, okay.
yeah. And about 3/4 inch wide. Hey, I'm running over your time, so
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mom.
That's okay.
No, it's great.
We like you.
Well, first, thank you. Second, before we can convene and kick everybody out, any questions for him? Because it's.
You don't think I asked enough?
Any questions besides Billy?
I mean, I've got more charts, so.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask. How much more material do you have? Because
Let's
maybe
see
we
where I
need to
am.
have you back again.
Right. Complete it.
Let's see, this is
67
I'm
of
2/3 of the
96.
way through.
67 and
Yeah, I
96.
think we
I
should have
can
you
see
back.
that. 67 of 96.
Yeah.
And then I have another question, but it can if he's coming back.
Well, do you want to come back next Sunday?
Yes, I'll be happy to do it.
Yeah, if you can do it, finish it up.
Okay,
Can
I'll
I
just
come
tell you
back?
what my question.
Look at Kelly.
Oh wait, Kelly.
Sunday is very busy. The 15th is very busy.
Oh,
Okay, never mind.
If you're having class.
After the first of the year,
In January.
after the first
That
of
gives
the
you
year.
more time to finish chapter 16, right?
Well, I tell you, yeah, okay. I'll let you guys find it out. Give me a date when you can come back, and then yeah,
January 1st.
that's like a
She didn't want to
Tuesday.
miss
Well,
But-
then I have a question that you don't have to answer now if you're coming back, but I've asked Chris this, we've touched on it, but the Nephilim, the sons of God married the daughters of earth, the Bible says, in Genesis,
Genesis
and
6.
Numbers. Yeah, Numbers
Genesis
6. And
Yeah.
so like, and you even showed a picture of one, I mean, huge guys, so.
Is there evidence of
So,
that?
so yeah, one of the things that you get the Genesis 6 sort of controversy, which is that flows. Genesis 6 is obviously before the flood, and sons of man came onto the daughters, or sons of God came onto the daughters of men. They mated, and we have something. And then all of a sudden,
Giants.
the giants, the Nephilim, and basically, then you have the flood. Okay, won't go too much there.
Yeah.
But then you jump back to the Exodus when they're coming back into the land,
Okay.
and there's giants in the land. There's still giants. Anyways, and there is skeletal remains that have been of giants. Okay, now, yeah, giants. What does that mean?
We just wondered.
Yeah,
That's
I
another
mean,
word.
there are nine. You know, Goliath was in some versions 9 feet tall.
Okay.
Okay, so where does science fall with that? I mean, there are bones that they've pulled up.
You can research it for me.
Yeah, I'll give you an off-the-cuff comment. I am not aware of any specific instantiation of that.
There are. I mean, because we pulled out some archaeology.
That doesn't stand out in my memory of, hey, what about these guys?
Well, it's
Or where
not.
do they fit
It's
in?
not widely publicized.
Yeah.
And I can send you some.
Yeah.
But there's it's basically a biblical conspiracy theory, and it shows the Nephilim show up throughout the beginning parts of creation before the flood and through the inhabitants the taking over of Canaan.
Weren't they in the land of, that
Canaan.
God
Mhm.
said, I want you to take over that, and it scared the,
Well, Caleb, when he took the hill country, knocked out the last remaining giants. So the Bible talks about giants.
Okay.
There is, again, some archaeologically proof of
And these are
giants.
typically 9 foot,
They're large human beings.
okay.
Yeah, because I have some pictures that we showed the class of them when we went through that. So there you go.
So will you come back?
Yeah.
You let me. We'll get together. You let me know a date that works for you guys, because I don't want you getting upset with or your wife getting upset
No,
with
no,
me
no.
because she's upset
I'm
with you.
just tired and hungry.
Come in, hello.
Back when, whatever.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Maybe
Ann.
we should leave her home
Next time. Thank you.
Oh, no worries.
Wait, don't go.
Okay.
Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Hey, have a safe trip.